Hello, everyone. My name is Rudy Rivera. This is my first podcast on mental toughness. It's a thrill and an honor to have as my first guest my longest running friend in the whole world, Tony Ortiz. Tony and I have known each other since kindergarten and have maintained that friendship until well in our old age. Tony, can you please tell everybody your complete name?
Luis Antonio Ortiz.
That's a lot.
Yes.
My name is just Rodolfo Rivera, and everyone calls me Rudy. I have no middle name, no other name. How is it that you have such a long name? Or did you even know what your name was?
I did not know what my real name was until I had to get a birth certificate in fourth grade. And that's when I found out that that was my real name. And I asked my mom, and she says, well, we just wanted to call you Tony. In fact, all my brothers and sisters had different names than what was on their birth certificates. And
I remember your brother Juani, your sister Chela.
yeah,
They all had a nickname. That's why it's hard to know somebody's real name, because you always go by a nickname.
yeah. And 4 out of my 5 sisters had Maria as part of their name, which was my mother's name too.
I know. I remember your mother well, Maria Tomasa. She was an incredible lady.
Oh, yes.
Incredible lady. How many brothers and sisters did you have?
There were 13 of us. Okay, 8 boys, 5 girls, and all but my one sister, my oldest sister, has passed. She passed away this past July, or a year ago.
I'm sorry to hear that. I just learned about that recently.
Yeah.
Well, we grew up with just me, my mother, and my sister. We lived in that apartment above the Sahara Bar. You remember the Sahara Bar on 28th Street?
Oh, yeah.
It was right across from the steel plant. Tony, Lorraine at that time had a population, I think, of about 117,000. And from what I recall, maybe 17% of that population was Hispanic. In our Southview graduating class, there were 324 students, and of that, a large percentage were Hispanic at Southview High School. And the Hispanic composition was Puerto Rican, Mexican. In fact, my family was the only Dominican family. I'm half Puerto Rican, but my mom, my grandmother, my aunt were the only Dominicans, I think, in the town at the time. And they used to call my mother Luisa la Dominicana, Luisa the Dominican. And that's how they identified you. Tony, this is a broad question, but how did you feel growing up as a Hispanic in South Lorraine?
Well, I looking back now, I felt okay, but depends where I was. Okay. Like I was in the church, that was all Hispanic. That was the anchor of the community. When I was in school, depending on what class I was in, but you and I and a few of our friends, most of us, we were the only Hispanics in those classes. So it depended where I was. Okay. In athletics, I was fine. Okay. Because I was just one of the guys, and that's what I really enjoyed about athletics overall. There really was no division there as far as what I experienced.
I felt that within the Hispanic community, there was some unity, and there was also unity with the other ethnic groups that were non-Hispanics. Lorraine had, at that time, that I can recall, about 54 different nationalities. In fact, every year, those nationalities were celebrated with the International Festival. They'd have the Hungarian queen, the Polish princess, Puerto Rican princess, Mexican princess. There would be a big parade with every ethnic group, having people on the float with the local dress. Then there would be a huge bazaar type situation where every ethnic group sold its own food. So at a young age, I think we experienced a lot of Eastern European food, Mexican food, Greek food. That was one of the beauties of living in that community.
Yeah, I missed that because when I moved away, I didn't realize how lucky we were to live in such an international city. where we're able to experience a lot of things that others weren't.
Those were some of the good times, but we also experienced some of the racism too of being Hispanic. And for us, I call it the S word for Hispanics, and I can remember being called spick so many times. You just get to a point where, okay, so what? Let's move on.
Mm-hmm.
And there were houses we weren't allowed to go to. People thought we carried switchblades. I guess that was a leftover from West Side Story, between the Sharks and the Jets. So I did experience that. I also, I think, experienced it in education, because many of the students at that time, there were only a few of us in honors and college-bound classes. That number grew accordingly. And some professors were great, others weren't so good. Tell me, Tony, what were your experiences?
The same here. We had some good teachers, we had some bad teachers, and I would say it was 50-50. Some of the teachers wanted to be there, okay? And you can tell some that did not want to be there. So luckily, we had some that were there for a long period of time, and we're lucky to have some of them left when they did.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think another motivating factor was the church.
No, most definitely. I
So
was able to experience a lot of things coming from a large family that I would not have otherwise.
the church was a big influence because primarily it was a church composed of Hispanics. Every mass was in Spanish except the 9:30 mass.
Yes.
There's one person in that group that really sticks out in my mind, and that's Brother Cyprian.
Yeah, he taught me a lot of little things that were really important.
He taught me a lot too. I think the one thing he taught me was aim high, because if you don't make it, you fall somewhere in the middle and you're better off than you were. He was truly a man who just had so much kindness in his heart. And he started a lot of people on great paths. You know what he had me do, Tony, early on? If you remember, I was a church commentator at 9:30 in the morning. I'd have to talk in front of 300 people. Please stand, please sit. We will now sing hymn number such and such, the gospel according to Mark. And I had to do that at 9 or 10 years old. So you lose your stage fright. That other people he taught music to, how to play instruments. So
yeah, I was picked to be in a choir, and that really helped, because I was in the choir for many years after that.
And you never became a professional singer?
No. And I remember my first exposure to music, though, was at Oberlin College, and Brother Cyprian had something to do with that. That was my first exposure to music and a college. It made me think, hey, there's other things besides what's in South Lorraine.
Yes, that there's a different world out there.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Tony, these podcasts are going to really talk about issues of mental toughness. And with the obstacles that you had to overcome and I had to overcome, what was the driving force that said, I've got to get out of here? I can't live like this. And not to let people think that our lives were so miserable, but they weren't great either. And many of our friends worked at the steel plant, and that was their goal. What was the thing that this made you decide that's not for me?
I think it was the influence of my mother. She always pushed me. She's besides Brother Cyprian, she's the one that pushed me the most to do what I can with the resources that were available. And I had a lot of people step up to make sure that I was taken care of. Okay, people at the church, Brother Cyprian, Father Bruce, some community members that took interest in helping me, some teachers. Okay. In fact, one of them, I think, Larry Stark, was a coach, a tennis coach and teacher. He probably helped me more than anybody, because he started me on my track of athletic training, which became my
and your passion.
Yes.
But what was that moment in your mind that clicked that said, I'm going to do this, because remember, there are people telling us we can't, or people telling us that we should be happy just to get a job at the steel plant or wherever, whatever factory that exists at the time. What was that moment for you? You said,
I
no,
don't
this isn't for me.
Yeah, I don't think it was one moment, but it was cumulative, of different things that happen along the way that says, I got to do something else. And so I kept searching. And for some reason, ever since I was in junior high, I've always had interest in sports and helping people. And so I found that in athletic training, that became my profession. Um, that's, I got hooked on that. Okay. I did well. It wasn't easy. You know, it was easier for me to be honest with you, it was easier for me when I was in Lorraine than when I moved away.
Why
And
is that? Why is that?
when I was in Lorraine, I had my family. Okay, my brothers and sisters to help me out, just be supportive, but also the church was very supportive. Some people at school were supportive, some weren't, but I overlooked folks that were going to, what I consider were going to be in my way, and just took advantage of the folks that did help me. Or not took advantage, but just whatever they provided for me, I took advantage of that because there were opportunities.
See, for me, it was one defining moment. I had lousy study habits. My sister always got the good grades. I came home with a C or a D and I was happy. I passed. My mother was not happy. She'd say, do you want to be an idiot your whole life? But I passed, Mom. And then she'd say, well, why can't you be like my sister? Because she gets good grades. And, but I was just happy to pass. Now, what I find interesting about our situations, Tony, is our moms had no education. Yet somehow they realized that it was valuable. They realized that if our kids are going to get anywhere, they better study, because they didn't want us to have the life that they did. I mean, my mom, was single with, no child support. We lived on welfare. Your mom had to work constantly to feed 16 kids, and, resources were tight. They knew that there had to be a better way. They wanted it for all their kids. So, but that defining moment for me was at the beginning of 7th grade. I can remember getting up, sitting in my bed, and I just said, I better start studying. I just said, I need to study. And that day forward, first day of 7th grade, I had no study habits. So I read and reread and read and reread and was able to get good grades. And, it became easier every step of the way. So that was my defining moment. And getting back to talking about, like Brother Cyprian, for example, who helped everybody, I always took his advice to heart that says, just aim high. In my mind, and I think you probably feel the same way, not going to put words in your mouth, but I know you well enough to think, what do we have to lose, right? What
Exactly.
did we have to lose by just trying to do it?
Yeah.
And, 40 years later, we're both in professions that we love and care about.
Yes. Yeah. And it's, along the way, college wasn't even thought of. Okay. Just finishing high school was a major accomplishment as far as my parents were concerned. But I was lucky along the way that I met this guy at Lorraine Community College, Raul. Um, and he basically was the one that helped me get through the process because I had no idea how to fill out an application, what FAFSA, any of that stuff was.
Oh,
If you
yeah.
for him, okay, I would have never gotten through or started that process and got through community college, went on to Bowling Green, got my undergrad and grad degrees. That would have never happened if it wasn't for him.
For me, it would have been Brother Cyprian.
Yeah.
I've had many conversations with him about, you got to move forward. You don't listen to the negativity, just move forward.
Yeah.
Because there are people who said, well, are you sure you want to become a lawyer? What if you don't make it? You're going to be disappointed. the steel plant is very secure. In fact, I remember, you know who they are. I'm not going to mention their names, but they would our colleagues and our high school buddies would say, "Why are you going to college? You're going to graduate from college, spend all that money, and you're just going to go work at the steel plant and make what I'm making, so you save all that money." So in my mind, and I think, tell me if you felt the same way, I was in a hurry to get through college. I wasn't going to take a year off and study and work. And because what happened with most of those people is that they ended up not going.
Yes. And I said Raul, but I meant Saul Torres.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember Saul.
Yes, and Saul helped many of us. But when I took advantage of when I was in college to try to do as much as I could, getting involved with the student groups, I getting totally immersed in athletics because that was paying my way to get through. But I enjoyed my time, and I took advantage of any opportunity I did have. Through athletics, I've been in all 50 states. And I've been through Europe. I've been to a lot of different places because of my studies and my job that became of that study. I was very focused, and I stayed on track to do that.
Well, for audience, I have to say, I have to brag about my friend Tony, because when Tony was going to college, athletic training was not a discipline. You were an athletic trainer by default. Sometimes it was people who weren't good enough to play. Then you carried the water and whatever. But Tony, you were one of the pioneers, really, that made athletic training a discipline. In fact, a degree.
Yes.
And that's what you spent your career doing. So those of you who don't know, Tony is a superstar in that area. You mention his name with any college athletic trainer, and they're going to know who Tony Ortiz is. I found that here in Florida when I talked to one. You know Tony? Oh, yeah. He's a bigwig in that area.
I've been fortunate. I've had a lot of great students. Well over 500 are all over the country practicing athletic training, teaching, and practicing the skills.
Did you ever think that you would travel to all these countries and all these states?
I had no idea. Getting out of South Lorraine was good, but then being able to travel and seeing all these different people and being with all these different teams, taking care of a lot of professional athletes that have played for the Indians, the Cavaliers, and a lot of other different teams. That's just been an amazing ride. Again, it all started when I just took advantage of the opportunities that I had growing up, and never seen a barrier that I couldn't get through. I always, if somebody told me I couldn't do it, I was going to prove to them that I could.
How did you develop that mindset? Because Tony, the really my theme of my podcast is mental toughness. And what is it that makes you mentally tough? What is it that's made you so determined that you're going to overcome these obstacles?
I think it's something you're really born with, innate. Like I always tell the athletes that I've worked with that have become professionals, nobody had to motivate them. They were self-motivated. Okay. They were the ones, if you told them they couldn't do something, they were going to prove to you that they could. And that's just something that I learned along the way, and I just haven't abandoned that. Even in my other adventures that I've been through, I like when somebody tells me it can't be done, and I say, okay, I'm going to prove to you that it can be done.
So you say that was born within you?
Yeah, and it's something I learned. And again, I think that's from my mother. Okay. My mother overcame a lot of different obstacles, and not too many people know, but my mom was supposed to be a nun. Okay.
Oh my God. Yes, I remember. I remember that.
Yeah. When she was growing up in Puerto Rico, she was all set to go to become a nun until they found out that her parents were not officially married in the church because they lived in the mountains of Puerto Rico. So luckily for us 13 kids, she did not become a nun.
Some of the crazy rules of the church, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Don't get me started on that.
Well, that's a subject for another podcast.
Yeah.
See, Tony, the difference for me is I felt like I had nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And when people said you can't do it, my mind is, what do I have to lose? I'm going to try, because I'm better off trying and not succeeding than wondering if I ever would have or I could have. How many people haven't you talked to when you've gone back to Lorraine that says, oh, I wanted to be a lawyer, but I wanted to do this, but, and there was but. I bet you not one that you've met said, I tried and I couldn't do it, so I'm going to do something else.
No, I mean, it was, going back, it's hard. There's not a lot of people that I can honestly say that I can relate to in some situations, because when I talk to them, their expectations of themselves is not very high. I don't want to sound like that I'm conceding, but my drive has taken me these other places, and I'm never content with just mediocrity. That's probably being around athletics. I'm going to practice and work hard and get what I need from my family as much as possible.
Well, you weren't going to be the star football player, right?
No.
But you played a significant role in athletics as it is now. So even as a non-athlete, you made a significant impact on the sports industry.
Yeah. But like I like to say, it's hard for me to accept somebody that doesn't have vision, does not have the drive, is just content with mediocrity. That's not me.
Well, I think, and again, one of the other issues of mental toughness is that people oftentimes become their own worst enemy. They create these obstacles. Sometimes I think, Tony, people are afraid of success. You're comfortable in your little community in Lorraine and you don't want to leave it because you don't know what's out there. And what happens is the moment you leave, you can never go back. I mean, when we left our communities, things were never the same.
No.
A lot of our friends were never the same. We couldn't have relationships with some of the same friends because their paths went in a different direction. And I've seen...
And I think one thing we both have had is strong mothers. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
They were not going to accept anything than the best effort from us. That's how I feel. And also Brother Cyprian and Saul Torres, all those people, they weren't going to accept us not doing our best, or not at least not trying.
And even people like teachers like, Mr. Briola, who took a lot of Hispanic kids under his wing, Mr. Stark. And there were a lot of great teachers, also a lot of terrible teachers too, that just were biding their time. But Tony, being your own worst enemy is what's really your biggest obstacle. There are people who, for example, I don't want to mention names, but there were 4 of us who we hung out. We were as thick as thieves. One of our friends was going to go to the police academy. Another one had a full ride to a university in Cleveland. And with our friend going to the police academy, who, by the way, I always thought he was smarter than all of us. He was extremely talented in writing. He wanted to write police novels. Put his hand through a plate glass window and cut a tendon. Just days before he was going to go to the police academy in Miami. He wanted to write police novels. And years later, talking to him, he just, rather than saying, I don't want to go, I think he just sabotaged his situation. And I see that so often, people just sabotaging themselves. And we had another friend, of course, who had a full ride to Cleveland University, and just got kicked out his first year, maybe even his first semester. And one of our other friends who became a doctor was no longer a doctor now for other reasons. That stuff deeply hurts me because there were people I cared about. They were important to us, and we just, it just, and I see that happening throughout, right?
Mhm.
People really sabotage yourself. And how often do you see that?
You know, um, throughout life, there's a lot of different curveballs that are thrown. And how you react to them, what you do about them, will really determine how well you handle those situations. Some things you can handle, and some things you can't. Um, but you just have to, if you have that deep rooted foundation, like we did from our mothers and our church, I think you can overcome those easier versus if you don't. If you
But
don't,
what do you
or if you don't have that support, okay, if you don't have that drive yourself, it's hard for you to overcome some of those things.
but what do you tell people who don't have that? Who have parents who don't care about them, who could care less where their kids are? How do you tell them they need to motivate themselves? They need to be tough.
Yeah, those are the tough situations. But I think even if they don't have a parent that will support them, there's always the Sowards and the Brother Serpents out there that are there to help you. At least you're going to get some support that'll help. But again, it's somebody you gotta respect as well. Yeah.
I remember when I was going to start judo, and Les Fasikas was the judo instructor at the YMCA. And his wife said to me, "Well, you need to buy a judo gi." And I said, we can't afford one. So I would practice, and Les bought me my first judo gi. So I can take judo. I'm eternally grateful to him for that.
Hmm.
And when I was, remember the tavern, Mill Tavern on 28th Street, as
Yeah.
I was shining shoes, and I mentioned this in my TED talk, I think you saw that this drunk says, "I'm going to buy you a desk." He asked me, "Why am I shining shoes?" I said, "I'm going to buy a desk." And he said, "Come with me." He took me to Mars Furniture Store and bought a desk for $45. And I used that desk to study all through high school and college, and when I was home. So I guess I would say to those people, look for people to mentor you, because I think most people are willing to mentor. So, Tony, if a young man comes up to you today, what would you say to him?
Well, funny you asked that. I have a center where we have kids that come every day. Okay, so we basically it's called El Puente, and so that's our intent of our center is to connect these kids to the help that they need, and that's basically my way of paying back for all the help that I got along the way. I've had it for about 11 years. And so I get mentors from the two major universities here in Dayton, the Wright State and University of Dayton, but also from a lot of the other area Catholic schools and different Hispanic org serving, or basically Hispanic social agencies, or not agencies, but groups that have joined forces with me to try to help these kids. Again,
What
it's just showing them the right way, being good role models for them. That's what we try to do.
do you feel like you owe something to society? You feel that you owe a debt?
Yes, because I wouldn't be here by myself. You can't do it by yourself. You know, you gotta have help along the way, but it also you gotta help those people, other people. You basically are just paying it forward. There's no way can we ever repay Brother Cyprian or Mr. Briola or Saul or any of those people. But we do bring a smile to them when we do succeed and we're able to help somebody else.
I think that's part of our social obligation, our social responsibility to help others. Tony, somebody listening to this podcast is going to say, "Well, that's all well and good, but give me some specifics. What are some of the things you did day to day to make sure, like from A to Z?" Like, for example, I would write things down. I would write goals down, what I want to do, and I try to have certain time periods for it. I would sit down, devise a plan, and try to follow it. So, for example, my plan was I wanted to go to law school, and I had to break it down into sub plans. So, first plan is how am I going to pay for college to begin with? Okay. Second plan is then how am I going? I have to graduate, and then third plan is I have to get accepted, and the fourth plan is now I have to pay for it. So, what would you recommend to people?
I think they just have to find the right mentors. I was lucky in the sense that uh, being in athletics and also teaching, and I've been teaching for 41 years. I had these daily interactions with students and athletes. Okay? So I had these daily conversations with these athletes and students where I was able to just be that listening ear and guide them through that. And a lot of those students and athletes have gone on to do good things. And I think just those daily conversations we had, I think did play a part in it. Because if they're forever grateful and they continuing to carry the torch, that's the key. All our daily interactions, what you do with people, is very important. Because again, that person can go on and help somebody else, and that continues to duplicate or multiply as you continue to go.
Well, what would you tell them to do day by day, though? When you get up in the morning, this is what you need to do.
Um, I'm not sure that with students today, a lot of it rely on social media and other things like that. So I'm not sure that there's something you can do day to day. I think it's something you to do cumulative, and you hear from different people, different resources, different opportunities. The one thing I do tell my students or anybody to listen is be active. No matter who the person is, if you help them, you just never know how much that help is going to mean to them. That's if anything I tell a student is be active, be proactive too. Don't wait. Be proactive on everything that you want. It's not going to just come to you unless you go after it.
You have to ask for it, right?
Oh, for sure. For sure. It's just like preparing for a big competition. It's what you do on a daily basis. It's the habits that you form. Okay. It's the drive that you either have or you don't have is going to make you successful.
It's the drive is the constant
Oh,
factor, but also believing you can do it. Most professional athletes visualize.
yes.
The running back visualizes himself running, to the touchdown zone. I visualize myself throwing as the quarterback throwing the pass and as the tight end making the catch all at the same time.
And you got to know what motivates an individual too. I'm going to give you a story. We had a basketball player at Wright State who became the 12th pick in the NBA draft, played for the Cleveland Cavaliers. His name is Vitali. Vitali wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing in school. So coach calls him over and told him that he was just going to sit that day and watch everybody practice. That was motivating to him because what he lived for was to play basketball every single day. But when he had to sit there and watch his friends practice, that was enough motivation for him to change what the habits that he was getting into. But you got to find out what motivates a person, okay? And if you can just use reverse, take that what they like away until they do what they're supposed to do.
Motivation is a key factor. Motivation, having a plan, and executing on the plan.
Exactly.
But you have to know what your goal is. You have to know what your dream is. How many times don't you ask kids now, what do you want to do? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. I was determined at seventh grade. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. That was my dream.
Unfortunately, I've had a lot of students that really don't know until they meet somebody or they're working with a specific team or doing a specific internship where then the light goes off. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That light
Yes,
goes off for them and they will, hey, this is what I want to do. Okay.
exactly. It goes on, and the light bulb has to click.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like an alcoholic, for example. The alcoholic has to decide, hey, I'm not going to drink, because it doesn't matter what program you're in. If you don't want to be better,
Yeah.
if you don't want to achieve a goal, then no matter what opportunity they have in front of you, it's not going to happen. How many students haven't you seen, Tony, whose parents have all the resources in the world, have paid for multiple colleges? Um, you have kids that are on the 10-year plan to graduate from college, but it boils down to them not wanting it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Every year, I would take 20 new students. Okay. And I'd interview about 100 for those 20 spots. And out of those 100, a lot of them were 4.0 students, had all these great recommendations. But then I would interview each one of them with my team. And their responses would really determine whether they got in the program or not. Because, we've had a lot of 4.0s and ACTs and real high scores. But when you talk to them, they couldn't talk to you. They couldn't tell you why they wanted to become an athletic trainer. Okay? That's the key. If they can't tell you, they can't communicate, how are they going to deal or work with athletes or screaming coaches on a daily basis? Those are little things that the intangibles that are just as important as getting good grades and having the resources. You got to have the drive, you got to have the motivation, you got to have the personality that fit what you're going to try to do.
As a Mexican would say, ganas, échale ganas,
Yes.
like with desire.
Exactly.
My friends in Guatemala would say, ponte las pilas, turn on the batteries.
Yeah.
You got to have that chutzpah.
Yeah.
Tony, let's go back a second to Lorraine and growing up there. One thing I found interesting is that a number of our friends were hiding the fact that they were Hispanic. And we even tried to anglicize their names. I remember one in particular. He was at the same year, we graduated the same time we did, and the last name is Chavez. And if you see him, he'd say, no, my name is Chavez, not Chavez. My name is Chavez. Until his sister ran for city council, and she said, oh, my name is Chavez. It's Chavez now, not Chavez. And they'd say, my name is Chavez. My name is Torres. They wanted to teach their kids English.
Yeah.
And a number of the students now regret not knowing Spanish. I remember being in high school Spanish, and a number of Puerto Ricans were flunking Spanish. How could you flunk Spanish? You're Puerto Rican. And you have parents that speak Spanish at home. But there was a thought that you just teach in one language because it'll confuse the kids.
Oh, yeah. There were some, like I said, I've had students from all over. There was a lot of schools that wouldn't allow the kids to speak anything other than English in their schools.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Out of Texas, a few other states, they just won't. And again, they've missed that opportunity. Okay. I was fortunate enough this week, my niece is a principal in Columbus. Her name is Sandra. They just started a world language school that she's going to do great. Again, but these are kids from Spanish backgrounds, French backgrounds.
Mm-hmm. I was class president, and I gave the commencement speech, and I wanted to give the speech in English and in Spanish. And Mr. Adams said, nah, I wouldn't do that. It doesn't seem like it's a good idea. And what I said was, okay. And then with the help of some people, I wrote my commencement speech in Spanish and English. So as I started in English, and then I went into Spanish. And so, many of our classmates, their parents didn't speak English. And all of a sudden they hear the Spanish going around, and yay, and they're like Puerto Rican power or whatever. My thinking at the time, Tony, was, what are they going to do? Expel me? I'd already been accepted into college. But, and to this day, really, the fact that nobody in my house spoke English is one of the reasons why I still speak Spanish.
Yeah.
And for me, it was also important to learn Spanish, formally. So that's why I took the Spanish in high school and college. I have a dual major in political science and Spanish, because I thought, how could I be Puerto Rican and not speak Spanish? To me, that was just an abomination. But it happens so often. And now people are taking an about face. They're enrolling kids in magnet schools that you speak in Chinese. All the classes are in Spanish. That is really what's, what I see happening now, a complete reverse from when we were kids.
Oh yeah. But look at what you've done with your insurance company and other jobs that you've had. How much has your bilingualism, biculturalism has helped you?
Oh, incredibly. I mean, my international practice when I was in private practice was built because one of the reasons it was built because I spoke Spanish. I speak Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
I managed a lot of litigation in Mexico, and it's easy for me to sit in court and listen and understand. But what also helps me is when I'm in places where I don't speak the language, I have an interpreter in my good ear. But if you know about the differences in one culture, it becomes easier to learn about the differences in other cultures. And having been fortunate to be raised in a community with so many different cultures.
Oh yeah.
So, well, Tony, I thank you so much for doing this interview. It's really great to see you again, even though we don't see each other as often as we should.
Yeah.
You're still basically my best friend. It's been quite a ride these years.
It's been fun. Been fun. We're not done yet.
We're not done yet. We've got another 30 years to go, right?
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot more people to help. So,
well, let's get going.
Yep.
And if you want to bring any of them on the show, just let me know.
Okay.
If there's anyone you think we need to hear from, you bring them in, because this is going to be a regular podcast.
For sure. All right.
Thank you. Thank
Bye,
you, everyone. Goodbye.